Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hi. What are we doing? Okay, so I've got how much time? A 40-minute, but I'll cut it down. How many minutes do I have? 20? Maybe 2:30? Okay. Okay, and I'm not seeing anything on my screen at all, so I'm not sure whether I can share my screen or not. Do you want me to try? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay.
Good afternoon and welcome to Live from the Eagle's Nest. I'm Randy Robinson here at the studio of the National Conservation Training Center. That's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services main training center near Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and along the banks of the beautiful Potomac River. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. So we've got a great show for you. We've got a very special guest, and this is our Earth Day edition. And I know yesterday was Earth Day, but every day is Earth Day, right? Or it should be. So let's just call this Earth Day Part 2 of 365. So for our Earth Day guest, we have author Tina Morris. Tina is author of Return to the Sky, fantastic book that she's going to be talking about here in just a little bit. We'll introduce Tina. Before we get started though, again, thanks for joining us today. We want to say a big thanks to our partners, the Outdoor Channel, the Friends of NCTC, Bald Eagles 101, and all of our EagleCam viewers who keep track of the nest action and post online photos and videos. It's a team effort. We've got our production team here, Brett Billings and Rob Garfinkel. Welcome to our old friends from 23 years ago when we started making observations here at this nest, and we welcome all of our new friends too. Speaking of old friends, our longtime director at the National Conservation Training Center, Steve Chase, is going to be retiring soon. So we want to say a special hello to Steve. Steve had an idea way back in 2003 or 4 about putting a camera up on top the eagle's nest. The eagles came here in 2003, built a nest on their own. We didn't bribe them or bait them in any way. They're totally wild eagles, and they still are. But Steve thought it would be cool to put a camera up there. So we figured out how to do that, put a camera up there in 2005, and in the spring of 2006 was the first time we actually got to see a full nesting season. That was a very good year. We had 3 eggs, 3 hatched, and 3 fledged in 2006. And at that time, Steve also started what he called the Shepherdstown EagleCam Daily blog. And it was a blog that connected a lot of people. A lot of people came online through the blog. And that was kind of the predecessor to our present day chat room that we have on through the Outdoor Channel. So we want to wish Steve a very happy retirement, all the best in all of his retirement adventures for Steve Chase. So go ahead and send questions in anytime in the YouTube chat. I'll see them here and we'll get to them after Tina Morris's presentation. But for those of you that are brand new, we want to give you a little update on the eaglets here. If we could go to the cameras, Rob, we'll take a look. We've got 3 cameras in the tree. That big sycamore tree is the nest is about 80 feet off the ground, and we've got a camera that looks down onto the nest. That's camera 3. There are 2 eaglets in there. Now, a little hard to see because they're in the shadows. It's a nice warm spring day here, 80 degrees, beautiful spring day. The eaglets are kind of keeping it cool over in the shadows, but if you look to the far left, there one of them just moved. These eaglets are 27 and 24 days old. So tomorrow, the oldest, the first hatched, will be 4 weeks old. And they're doing very well. They're doing very well. We're happy to report. And so this is another view of our camera. This view is looking kind of laterally toward the northwest. The river that you can't see is just in the background. And I believe that's the female on the nest here. Can't quite tell, but she's a little bit bigger than the male. That looks like her. And the 2 eaglets are snoozing in the background behind her. Now, during our program today, they may wake up and get a little food. You saw one just stretched out there. They're really growing fast. I mean, only not even 4 weeks old, and they're already the size of a chicken. Pretty soon they'll be the size of a turkey. Their muscles and their bone structure, their talons and their beak grow first, and then the rest of the body, like their feathers and their nervous system, catches up. That's what we'll be seeing in the next month when they get their black feathers that are already starting to come in, their pin feathers, their blood feathers, their juvenile feathers. Now here's our view from camera 1. That looks out in the meadow toward the Potomac River. In the background are some white trees. Those sycamores, the bald eagles often like to nest in. If they're not on the nest, if you don't see the adults on the nest, chances are they're very close by because they are very good protectors of their nest. Now, bald eagles are a true conservation success story. Populations are coming up around the country. Cleaner rivers and lakes are vital to their habitat. So our national symbol and our national bird are doing well. And over the years, we've had a number of federal and state regulations that helped the bald eagles along. Back in 1940, the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, which is still in force today. They're still protected. 1970, we had the first Earth Day and the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency. In 1972, we had the ban on DDT and the Clean Water Act. Both of those were vital for bald eagles. DDT that was a pesticide that was used widely in World War II and after to control malaria mosquito, or mosquitoes that carried malaria, I should say. But DDT caused their eggshells to be too thin and they broke, and that's what caused the population to crash, at least in the lower 48 states, many of the states. So the Clean Water Act was vital. That brought fish back into our rivers and vital for their survival. We had the bald eagles protected by the Endangered Species Act that started in 1973. They were on the act from 78 to 2007 when they were delisted or taken off the act. So their populations came back in such a big way that in 2007 they were no longer threatened or endangered. However, they are still protected by the Bald and Golden Eagle Act. So many individuals from state and federal agencies, non-governmental partners, helped bring back the bald eagle. But if I had to pick out one person, that would be tough, but it would be our special guest today. Author Tina Morris, author of Return to the Sky. 50 years ago, Tina was a graduate student at Cornell University, and she will tell the story much better than I will. So I'm going to turn it over to Tina. Tina, thanks very much for being with us today.
Can anybody hear me? I'm not
Yes,
sure whether I'm on or not.
We can hear you, Tina.
Oh, okay. Then I will go ahead and start. Thank you.
Yep, we see your first
Thank
slide.
you for
It
having
looks
me
great.
here today. We've had a few technical issues, so I'm hope that this will work. But I will continue to speak. I'm speaking about my book, Return to the Sky, the story of the bald eagles I was trying to save 50 years ago. Although there were other restoration programs conducted in the 1980s in many of the northeastern and southeastern states, the one I will be talking to you about today started them all. And if you read the book, you will find out about my life and how I got there and what happened afterwards. But for now, the 7 eaglets that I took care of will take center stage, and they do this very well. It is a positive story, which we all probably need to hear today in light of the recent reports of bird decline. The saga of the bald eagle's return was inextricably tied to that of the peregrine falcon. Without its smaller and faster friend to set the pace, the success of the Eagle Project might not have been so auspicious. The raptor biologists who were responsible for the reintroduction of the peregrine in 1973 became the central force behind the restoration of the eagle 3 years later. The story of the eagle and the peregrine began in Ithaca in central New York State, home to Cornell University, known for its world-renowned laboratory of ornithology. By the 1970s, it had also become the epicenter for raptor reintroductions. We need to back up a decade, however, to the seminal event that started everything. In 1962, a marine biologist named Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, the book that sounded the alarm about the lethal effects of the pesticide DDT. At the time, few biologists paid attention to Carson, partly because of her doomsday predictions and partly because of her gender. Women were scarce in science at the time, which made it easy for the scientific community to dismiss her. It was her findings about DDT, a long-lasting pesticide used to combat malaria in World War II, that made Carson a main character in the bald eagle story. She discovered that DDT wasn't just killing the mosquitoes, but was breaking down into its metabolite DDE, which was absorbed by all the aquatic organisms consumed by birds. Once ingested, DDE interfered with the calcium metabolism of the bird's eggs, resulting in thinner shells and breakage as soon as they tried to incubate them. Although all birds were being affected, it was the ones at the top of the food chain, the ospreys, the bald eagles, and who eat fish, and the peregrine falcons who eat smaller birds who were most affected. Through a process called biomagnification, the pesticide was consumed by species at each trophic level. Find research by the group of people affected by falcons. Named Wisconsin, a conference was held in Madison. Research found falcon which was the release without parents. Sometimes these young falcons can be bred in captivity or taken from the nest at a young age. In the latter case, the birds have imprinted or identified with their parents. The peregrine program placed young falcons into hacking boxes where they were fed and protected by human attendants who stayed out of sight as much as possible. The boxes were placed in areas that most closely replicated the peregrine's natural habitat of cliffsides or ledges, towers, and later bridges when the releases moved to cities to minimize the predation on young falcons by animals like great horned owls. After its ban in 1972, DDT levels detected in fish declined precipitously. By the mid-1970s, the bald eagle's former habitat had become clean enough to receive birds again. Having witnessed the success of the peregrine program, New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation foresaw the year 1976 as an ideal time to bring the eagle back from its brink of extinction. By then, DDT had decimated its populations in all states of the Northeast, except for a few breeding pairs in Maine. Patriotic fever was running high, and nobody could imagine celebrating the bicentennial without their national bird. Although almost gone from the sky, the eagle's image was ubiquitous, on our currency, on sports team logos, and of course on our national seal, despite Ben Franklin's disdain for the eagle, which he considered a bad moral character, supposedly because of its scavenger nature. The turkey and other contenders didn't stand a chance against the grandeur of the bald eagle, our symbol of freedom, majesty, and power to represent the newly independent USA. By 1976, in the lower 48 states, eagles had been reduced to 417 pairs, too low a number to sustain the species. According to the terms of the Endangered Species Act, passed in 1973, the federal government controlled the bald eagle, so New York needed permission from the Department of the Interior to launch a reintroduction program. DEC's proposal to release eagles was denied due to the state agency not having any raptor biologists on staff who could lead it. Enter Tom Cade and his young and inexperienced wannabe graduate student, me. I'd arrived at Cornell to pursue my dream to work with Dr. Cade, but when he told me I needed a fun program to be as one of his students, my dream started to plummet. And then I had a chance meeting with the two Fish and Wildlife administrators in Washington in charge of the defunct eagle proposal. They asked Tom Cade to head the program for eagles due to his expertise with introducing peregrines. If I would be willing to work with the eagles, he said, he would agree to supervise the project, and the eagle program officially began in June 1976, but the groundwork began to be laid the previous fall. The first order of business was to find a suitable site in New York from which to reintroduce the birds. Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge near Seneca Falls was selected. Montezuma met all the requirements needed for a release site. Food would be plentiful in the 10,000-acre wetland complex. The presence of a wide variety of water birds and fish guaranteed its food potential for young bald eagles as well as adults returning eventually to breed. Whoa. Sorry, we're going the wrong direction here. Um, Protection of the young eaglets was paramount, so the release site had to be able to be cordoned off and made inaccessible to the public. Clark's Ridge, a hilltop overlooking Shockey Pool, the largest water body in the marsh, was hidden amidst a labyrinth of roads that traverse farmland around the refuge, making it impossible to locate it. Luckily, this was before the days of GPS and Google Maps. Bald eagles prefer to nest in tall trees in the V formed by strong branches, which the young use as practice perches when they're learning to fly. The adults like to be able to see around them, so height and being on the edge of the forest is important. Montezuma had many hardwoods surrounding the wetland areas, perfect for future nests. Once the site was chosen, the next dilemma was finding a source for young eaglets. Because there was no sustainable population left in any of the surrounding states, we had to go further afield to areas where DDT hadn't left its mark. Alaska had plenty of bald eagles, but the genetic makeup of this larger subspecies was thought to be too different to take a chance on. Instead, the program looked to the Midwest, particularly the Great Lakes states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota, where DDT hadn't been used as it had in the Northeast. Generally, bald eagles lay 3 eggs and try to rear 3 young. However, because of food supply and energy expenditure, often the third eaglet is smaller and weaker than its siblings. This slide is taken by the nest that was in the center and blew down a year ago, but the adult birds replaced it, and these are the birds that you just saw. When the climbers scaled the nest trees for us to band the young eaglets at about 7 weeks of age, it was up to them to determine which birds to remove. The local electric company donated and installed 4 35-foot high poles for the tower, on top of which we constructed a 7-foot platform. We had to think like eagle parents and build a nest for them closely resembling the nests where they were born. The next step was to create a canvas blind or hide next to the platform so I could observe and feed the birds without them seeing me. There was a hole in the blind where I could feed them with a long barbecue fork so they wouldn't view humans as their providers or food source, a dangerous situation for both species. At first, I had to climb the platform using metal pegs like those used by electric linemen, but once the scaffolding went up, my ascent became far easier and a bit less scary. We wrapped aluminum predator guards around the poles to prevent animals like raccoons from reaching the vulnerable young birds. The day finally came on June 18, 1976, when Wisconsin Fish and Wildlife climbers said that they had 2 eaglets ready to ship to New York. On hand to receive the eaglets was a large contingent of state, federal, and refuge people, a few biologists from Cornell, Tom Cade, me and my 2 dogs, Max and Moses. While most of the entourage stood at the base of the tower looking up, Dr. Cade tied the ropes around the crates. We hauled them up to the top of the tower, and he and I then pried open the tops and released them. The eaglets had been shrieking while in the crates with their call-I cry until they were able to jump onto their new nest as far away from their captors as possible. These weren't cuddly tame birds who wanted to be friends, and for this we were all grateful. They had to have a healthy fear of humans if they were to survive. After the eaglets settled down and the crowd dispersed, I was left alone on the hillside with my dogs, wondering how on earth the eagles and I were going to survive the next 3 months. The first order of business was to set up my campsite, including my tent and all the paraphernalia required for the eagles. To observe the birds, even when I wasn't up in the blind, I had a remote video camera with a monitor in the tent. The picture was a bit fuzzy by modern standards. Many of you have experienced more advanced technology with watching the Eaglecam at the center, and that certainly was not the case with 1976. The next order of business was to feed the young birds. The marshes were teeming with carp, but I had to catch them and stockpile them so they would be available for 2 meals a day. In the first year, fish were plentiful, and I trapped them in a spillway. Then I moved them to a large cage in the water where I could net them whenever I needed to. In the next year, however, a severe drought decimated the carp, and I had to enlist the help of local fishermen to restock my supply. Because eagles are Because eagles are opportunistic feeders, I also had to collect roadkill, so I had to pick up rabbits, squirrels, muskrats, etc. Rabbits were the food of choice. I knew we had to be able to track the eaglets when they left the nest, so banding and equipping them with radios became the next step before they fledged. Surveillance methods, especially for eagles, were in their infancy in 1976. So everything we did was trial and error, lots of experimenting to figure out how to attach a short-term radio to them and put color tags on their wings that could withstand the weather and be seen from a distance. My issue was going to be restraining the eagles, especially when I had to handle them alone. For this, I experimented with several body wraps, but what worked best in the end was my blue jeans. I cut off the leg, and its tapering shape was a perfect fit for an eagle. He couldn't move his wings, and with his talons wrapped with electrical tape and his beak unable to reach my hands, he was safe and secure, as was I. After spending my days watching and recording the eaglet's behavior from the blind, I noticed a significant increase in their energy level. It was finally time to remove the bars and let them out on the perch that we had nailed to the tower. Like all young creatures, first steps, or in this case flights, are a bit shaky. An eagle's size works against it when first taking off, so it looks like an out-of-control helicopter looking for a landing place. This usually was into the marsh below the hillside, its thick cattail stands interspersed with small pools of water. Without wind to help with lift, the young eagles couldn't become elevated, so were stuck. If they'd had parents, they would have fed them on the ground and watched over them until their wings were stronger. But it was up to me to find them, catch them, and return them to their nest on top of the tower for a second try. Hauling a struggling eagle under one arm while gripping the ladder with the other was never an easy task. In late winter and spring of 1977, we began to prepare for the next group of eagles. The decision to hack 4 birds had been made. The scaffolding had to be removed so a second nest platform could be built. A blind was placed between the 2 nests so I could observe and feed both sets of eagles. With the scaffolding gone, I was back to the metal pegs for climbing. Like a mountain goat, I would clamber up the platform, push aside the plywood door to my blind, and haul myself inside. In one of these photos on the left, you can see my blue jean cut-off shorts, whose legs were now in use as the sleeves to restrain the eagles. In 1977, 2 of our eaglets were taken from 3 bird nests, one from Michigan and one from Minnesota. But we also wanted to use captive-bred birds for the first time. Patuxent Wildlife Research Center offered us 2 eaglets raised by eagle parents held in captivity there. There turned out to be a big difference between the captive-bred young and the wild young. They'd been 2015, I received news from the DEC of New York that his body had been recovered, the victim of a vehicle hit. He had a band on his leg that identified him as one of my 1977 eagles. He was 38 years old. The project was begun. He bred for 35 years with 2 different mates, and he probably produced as many as 70 eaglets during his lifetime. Today in the continental U.S., eagles are most numerous in the Midwest and along the Atlantic Flyway. Minnesota has the second largest population, with Florida a close third, next to Alaska. Alaska boasts about half of the total eagle population. After 1977, I never returned to Montezuma, but I passed it on the thruway and always craned my neck to see if I could see the tower on Clark's Ridge. I followed the news about the hacked eagles as much as I could, but once Dr. Cade moved the Peregrine Fund to Boise, Idaho, my source of information was gone. In 2019, he died, and by 2020, I felt the story about the origins of this project needed to be told. I knew this meant returning to the marshes to see the eagles again. After I convinced the current refuge staff that I had been the one to start the Eagle Project, thanks to the expertise of the Cornell Peregrine Fund and Tom Cade, I was given the keys to the city, or the refuge as it were, and shown around the refuge, including the giant sculpture that sits out on the New York Thruway. Accompanied by my Montezuma guides, I bushwhacked my way back up to Clark's Ridge and saw the nest tower a bit bedraggled all these years later. Even the box holding the video camera was still intact, and I was able to go down memory lane with all the current refuge staff, telling them the story of how the eagles began to recover. As we stood on the dike road that runs along Shockey Pool, from where I had rescued so many youngsters from the cattails, I celebrated their success of 7 active nests inside the refuge, with 14 more in the area surrounding the boundaries. Although my heart is gladdened by the sight of so many bald eagles today, I know their success and increased numbers haven't been without criticism. Many people don't like having predators in their midst, don't understand that an ecosystem is most healthy when every trophic level is full and balanced. An apex predator like a bald eagle its chicks or take over its platform. Making room for all species is not something we do easily. Instead, we pick sides, and often the underdog becomes our cause. We forget,
Okay, both
and
Audible
still in hardcover.
and ebook. Okay. Um, so here's a question about, that was music from from the studio. We've got a lot of gremlins in the electronics today. So, question, and this is referring to the eaglets in this nest. Once these eaglets become adults, will they recognize their family after being away from the nest for a while? And on the other end, will Bella and Scout, the male and female, recognize these eaglets years later? Tina, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have any specific evidence that they recognize each other, but I know that my 1976 eagle came back in 1977 and joined up with the 1977 birds from the same site, and they definitely knew who they were. He spent the whole couple of months with them, and there was definitely a bond between them. So that's the only personal evidence I have of that, but I'm sure that there are other people who've observed nests over long periods of time that could tell you they don't come back to the same nest to breed, but they will come back to the same area. So because the parents will occupy the nest, the young won't.
We can't say for sure here. We have seen a number of young bald eagles come back to the nest. 2-year-old, 3-year-old eagles. And they could very well be from this nest. We have no idea if the adults would recognize them. Generally speaking, when bald eagles are nesting, they don't like to have other birds around, especially large birds like crows, hawks, ravens, owls, and other eagles. However, these birds have never been banded. We have no way of knowing of their comings or goings, and no way of knowing if a young bird that comes back at age 2 or 3 might have been from this nest. So it would only be speculation on our part that they do recognize each other. Somehow it seems like they would.
I think we're all set, and thank you very much for having me. I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties. I hope that you get a chance to see the whole show with all of the slides at some point.
Thank you very much, Tina. Can you still hear me? These two are very well fed, so there's no lack of food. But it's amazing how fast they grow. Now, in a month from now, they're going to be covered in dark feathers. Those will be just starting out. You can see those darker colors, the pin feathers or the blood feathers. They've got blood supply to them. Those will eventually grow into their juvenile and then their adult feathers, which protect them from the wind and the rain. Right now, they don't really have protection from cold weather, wind. Now, they've got thermal down. That gray down is protection, but it doesn't give them any protection from wind or rain. So the adult, male or female, will try to cover them up in the case of bad weather. So we've got another video, Rob. Let's see. This is on the 21st of April, just a couple days ago. And so, Rob, I don't know if you can put the audio up, but we got some interesting audio on this one. Somebody asked about other eagles coming in, and there was another adult eagle was coming around that day, and the pair here are a little agitated. They're very protective of the nest. They don't like any other big birds around. And that is Scout. That's the male who's over on the edge of the nest. As we're looking at it, the female, Bella, is in the foreground. And I believe we're going to see Scout take off right here. And he's going to go chase that other bird away. They were squawking, and you might see that or hear that if the audio's going out okay. In the meantime, I'm going to go look at I think we have a couple of questions in here. Yeah, so here the eagle comes around, and thanks to Deb Steck for posting these videos. Look at the female looking out. She's kind of cocking her head. Scout is up there chasing the other bird. We don't see them on the camera, but you can tell where they're at by where Bella there is looking in the distance. Now she's making a fuss. And there we just got a yeah, Scout was wound up. Now Bella's going to take off. She's flying over towards the edge of the forest, what we call the babysitting tree. And you saw that other eagle a little bit ago. Now, here you just saw briefly, you can see the whitehead fly by. That's the intruder eagle. And this happens every now and then. The Potomac River is right down below, and you can think of the Potomac River as kind of a highway for bald eagles. There's eagles moving along upstream, downstream, and that's the sound they make when they're agitated. So now you can see the other eagle flying up there at the top of the screen. And there they are, coming in for a landing. But the Potomac is just beyond those trees. You can't see it, but there's eagles moving up and down the river all the time. And this big tree, this big sycamore here on the National Conservation Training Center campus is visible from the river. So any bald eagle moving up or down sees that nest. They might be curious, they might be hungry, they might think there's fish in there, which there are. Now, before there's young ones in the nest, the bald eagles, the adult pair, they generally will eat off the nest. They don't often bring food into the nest for the reason that it attracts other eagles. And not just eagles, anything that's hungry and flying around, vultures, owls, and so on. But during the nesting season, right now, they have to bring food in to feed the young ones. So there's often several fish in there. We've seen a number of squirrels brought in. There's a lot of squirrels this year. So here on the overhead camera, we're looking down here, and you can see several fish in the nest. There's the young ones. They look like they're out cold, but they're sleeping. And you can see the older one, the bigger one on the right. That's the difference that 3 days make. You can see in this shot, the younger one, 3 days younger, is on the left side. The older one, who will be 4 weeks old tomorrow, is on the right. And they're both about the size of a chicken. The one on the right is kind of a larger sized chicken. So they grow amazingly fast on that steady diet of fish. And you can see how already their wings are probably a good 18 inches long, if not longer. So that was one of the exciting days this week. Just a couple of days ago, Tuesday it was, the 21st, and there they go again. So eventually that eagle moved on, and all was well. But look at, oh, this is today. Rob, if you want to bring up our camera there, she was just stretching her wing out. Their wings are beautiful. You can see that coloration on the edges of their feathers. Beautiful wings. So if there are no other questions coming in, we're going to wrap it up for now. And let's see, our next program will be in 2 weeks. That'll be Thursday, May 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you very much for joining us today. We will get the Tina Morris's public lecture, our conservation lecture series with Tina Morris author of Return to the Sky. We'll get that posted up on our YouTube page. Actually, it's already there, so if you might have to search for it a little bit. Look for the Conservation Lecture Series, Tina Morris, Return to the Sky, the story of her work with bald eagles up at Cornell University. And Tina was actually the mother, so to speak, to rearing the first 7 bald eagles that were reared up at Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge and then released in New York State, and eventually the offspring of those traveled to other states. So thanks again. It's a great story. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you next time.